Hi, my name is Dear Tiagi, and in this video, I'll be going over every SAT grammar rule you need to know to ace your upcoming SAT. So to start, the first thing we know are clauses. So a clause is a group of words with a subject and a verb. And there are two types of clauses you need to know, and the two main ones. There's an independent clause and a dependent clause. And the main difference between an independent clause and a dependent clause is that an independent clause expresses a complete thought and can stand on its own. So it can stand on its own, while a dependent clause does not express a complete thought and does not stand on its own. So for example, an independent clause would be, I eat pizza, right? That could be a full sentence, it's a complete thought. But because I eat pizza, or when I eat pizza, is not a independent clause because of just one phrase, right? This phrase in the beginning makes it an incomplete thought, right? We have this phrase, which is called a subordinating conjunction, and what it does is it makes the whole clause dependent, so we need something else to make it a complete thought. So that's the main difference, and the main thing you need to know is how to link these clauses together. So for the independent and the independent clause, the way we link these two clauses together are through three ways. The first way we have is through either a period or a question mark, so and punctuation. We can also use a semicolon, and the key thing to recognize is that a semicolon is exactly the same as a period. There is no difference between a semicolon and a period on the SAT. So they both link independent clauses. And you can also use something called coordination. So you can use a comma plus a fanboy to link two independent clauses. So this could be comma. A fanboy is basically a conjunction. It stands for and nor, but, or, yet, so. Okay? And so the main ones you'll see are and but if you have a comma and then a conjunction, these can also link two independent clauses. Okay? Next, we can also connect dependent to independent clauses. And the way we connect these is through a comma. So for example, the sentence, when I eat pizza is dependent, and then let's say I drink Coke, right? That's an independent clause. So when I eat pizza, comma, I drink Coke. So that's how we link it. We link two dependent and independent clauses with a comma. Now, if we had independent to dependent, we don't need any punctuation. So for example, I drink Coke when I eat pizza, right? There's no punctuation in between those. So no punctuation there. But what we can do is we can use a colon. So sometimes if we have an independent phrase, we can use a colon after the independent phrase. And this part after is the part that adds an explanation or emphasizes something. So the whole point of a colon is it prefaces an explanation. It adds extra information, right? This is extra information. And it can sometimes be used for effect to emphasize that this, whatever comes before, this is the outcome. Okay? And we also have supplements. So supplements, what they do is they add extra information. And we have two types of supplements. We have essential supplements and we have non-essential supplements. And the key way to recognize if it's essential or non-essential is essential supplements have no punctuation around them, while non-essential supplements have punctuation around them. So this could be, like, for example, comma, dot, 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 comma, the dot, dot, dot is a non-essential information. It could be dash, dot, 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 dash. It could be parentheses, dot, 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 parentheses, right? And the key idea here is whenever you have a non-essential clause, whatever punctuation you start with is the same punctuation you have to end with. And these non-essential elements, the idea is if you take it out of the sentence, then the sentence would still make sense and would still read well. So the trick is whenever you see a question at SAT with a lot of phrases, a lot of punctuation stuff, if you see a clause such that you have some text, comma, some text, comma, some text, right? This clause here in the middle is going to be non-essential. You can cross that off and you can read the whole sentence and it should make some sense still. So the trick is with supplements, you can cross them off and you can read the sentence like that and it should still make sense. It should still work. Okay? And again, the idea is you have to stay consistent. You start with a comma and you have to end with a comma. Okay? Next, let's go over modifiers. So with a dependent independent clause, right? Like I explained before, when you have a dependent clause, you have to make sure that whatever comes right after it, comma, matches whatever was being described before. So for example, if I say covered in cheese, comma, and I have a blank, right? I can say covered in cheese, the man ate the pizza, right? And the reason why is because if I did that, the man would be the noun coming immediately after the description, and therefore one can only assume that what's being described as covered in cheese is the man. And so the idea is whenever you have some kind of question that has a dependent clause, comma, a blank, right, the first word immediately after the comma has to be what you're being described before. So in this example, it would be covered in cheese. The pizza was eaten by the man, right? Because the pizza is the one that's been covered in cheese. So that's modifiers, and it's something you really need to keep in mind. Next, let's do pronouns. So pronouns are words that stand in for a noun, and they help you to not repeat yourself. So stand in for a noun. And some examples of pronouns, you probably know most of them, but I, we, she, he, they, it, etc. And the idea in the SAT is whenever you have a pronoun, you have to make sure that you agree it in terms of the gender. So if it's a woman, if it's a man, right, you usually agree that. And you also agree it in terms of singularity or if it's plural. So for example, let's say that we have the sentence Maya was late because, and then we have some kind of pronoun overslept. So here, we match this pronoun to the subject that's being talked about, which is Maya. Maya is singular, she's a girl, so it'd be she. And that's basically the idea for pronouns. And one more thing is pronouns never have an apostrophe, right? So speaking of apostrophes show possession versus plurals, which just have an S at the end. So for example, when I say bees are important, right, those bees don't possess anything in the sentence. We're just saying that they're plural. So we have no apostrophe here. We don't have the apostrophe. But here, if I said Michigan's blueberry crop is famous, here I would have an apostrophe because Michigan isn't plural. We're not saying it's plural. We're saying that Michigan possesses or owns its blueberry crop. Okay? And the idea is for singulars, right, for possession, we just use an apostrophe S after the noun. So for example, if I had companies, right, I would do company, apostrophe S to show possession. And if it already ends in an S, like rhinoceros, right, then I just do apostrophe S after rhinoceros, so rhinoceroses, to show possession. If I have plural, then you do S apostrophe. So for example, heroes would be like that. Or if I already had a noun that doesn't end in an S, like men is plural, but doesn't end in an S, I just do apostrophe S like that. And finally, for pronouns, again, you don't use any punctuation or any apostrophe to show possession. It's like hers, there's no punctuation there. Okay? And again, plurals don't ever use punctuation with apostrophes, right? Because they don't show possession. Plurals are just to show that there's a number of them. Okay? And then finally, we have verbs. And the trick with verbs is that all the rules we learned before can kind of help you figure out these verbs questions. So whenever you're looking at a verbs question, it can get a little tricky, but the idea is you want to make sure that you read the sentence, cross off non-essential clauses, right? Because that helps you identify what the main subject and the main verb you're agreeing to is, and then identify what this verb has to agree to. Okay? And once you identify that, identify things like, is it singular / plural? Right, this is the main one you can identify, but then you can also identify the tense. Is it, past tense, future tense, etc. And once you have this and this, you can basically figure out any verb question. And again, the idea is they will trick you by trying to trick you into saying it's plural when it's not plural. So for example, it could be a possessive singular noun with an S at the end, and that might trick you into doing a plural verb. But again, if you just identify it and think about, okay, is this singular or plural, you can kind of navigate around that issue. And One more thing, for verbs, there's also a trick where if you have a singular, plural, 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 you already know the answer is going to be singular, right? That verb, that rule, that's going to be the one that's correct. Or for example, plural, singular, 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 plural is going to be correct because that's the only one that's different from the others. This trick also works from other questions. You can identify, what's the same about all three of the options except this one, and then kind of pick that to your answer because, one of them has to be correct. Anyway, that's every SAT grammar rule you need to know for your upcoming SAT. Thank you guys all for watching, and I'll see you guys all tomorrow. Bye.